All right, welcome to another episode of the Meat Mafia podcast. We are joined today by Dr. Tro, and as always, Mr. Salazzo. Dr. Tro, what is up?
Nothing. Happy to be here. I know you guys woke up a lot earlier than me, so I'm happy to be here. That's it. Let's break up the other mafias. That's what I said.
I love it.
The medical mafia. Let's break up the big food mafia. The energy balance mafia.
Yeah, we're completely on the same page with you. Just so we know, we like to do like a nice bone broth initiation. That's what we did for Dr. Brian. So if you're cool with that, we should be all good.
What's a bone broth initiation?
We just have to submerge you in about a tank of bone broth. It's somewhat of a christening to get into the meat mafia.
Baptism.
You're rewarded with a ribeye afterwards, but because it can be a traumatic experience. We had Dr. Brian trembling, but
he did okay. He did
all right. He was the first one. So
let me tell you, man, the old grandma remedies, right? Like bone broth when you're sick, right? Like I'm telling you, there's something to that. If somebody tested bone broth versus Paxlovid, I wouldn't be surprised if they had equivocal results. Sorry, I said the C word.
Yeah. I mean, even I've noticed even with my colitis, if I ever eat something that's off my plan, the next day I'll drink a little bit of bone broth, like have a fast, drink some bone broth, maybe throw some butter in there. And I feel like it's just so soothing on the stomach. I'll have like 2 cups of that. And I swear within a couple hours, my stomach is completely back to baseline. So I don't know the science behind it, but it's definitely worked for me. So, but Dr. Tro, just to get into it a little bit, we think that a lot of our audience probably already has some degree of familiarity with who you are. But for anyone that doesn't know, you're a board certified physician. You publicly state that your mission is to end obesity and type 2 diabetes, which we love. You're a co-founder and director of the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners. You also co-host the Low Carb MD podcast. You're close friends with Dr. Brian, who we have a great relationship with as well. And we know that you've had your own incredible nutritional journey and story that's challenged the conventional methods of how we're taught about nutrition and medicine. So for our listener, just to start off, we would love to learn a little bit more about your story and what really got you into this space.
Well, I don't know. It depends on how far back you want to go. I mean, I could start at age 8 when I started gaining weight and, noticing that, I had gynecomastia, right? I literally had, the medical definition of man boobs at age 8. My whole family was overweight. And that really inspired me to kind of figure this out. I remember being 10, 11 years old saying, I'm going to go into medicine and I'm going to end obesity. I'm going to beat the gene, right? These were my early formative thoughts. So I had a passion for figuring this out. I saw my mom suffer. I saw my dad suffer. I saw my brothers struggle with weight for a long time. And I had some, small bits of reprieve in my childhood. I basically had a bout of anorexia at age 13, 14. And I lost a lot of weight, but it really devastated me in certain ways. But I had this passion for figuring this out. I had a personal struggle all throughout my life with appetite, satiety, hunger, understanding why I'm hungry, right? I just didn't click to me. And so anyway, really, passionate about medicine, passionate about healthcare. And I went into some rabbit holes, after college, I got a health science degree. I analyzed the pharmaceutical industry. I helped small pharmaceutical companies figure out, what products were viable, what products would make it through the regulatory process. I helped hedge funds figure out which drugs would be approved and which drugs didn't, had a big market potential. So early on, I had a passion for medicine, passion for healthcare, really inspired by my family's struggle and my own struggle. And I started to investigate, for capital reasons, I guess, the industry of medicine. Right. So I had no like agenda. This is me like working as a hedge fund analyst type guy, a boutique biotech intelligence service. I got no mission at that time. Right. It's just I'm interested in health and I want to, figure out the system so I can help small pharma and hedge funds make some more money. Right. And I was wildly obese. I was wildly obese. So I got accepted to med school and went to med school, eventually went to residency, and always this passion for health, right? Healthcare, health, evaluating systems, evaluating what's wrong. I got up to 350 pounds. I knew I wanted to go into primary care, preventive care. That was always my passion, but I couldn't quite figure it out for myself. I loved exercise. That was never, I always exercised. Right. And yet I found myself ridiculously overweight. And so I was, then into residency, went into internal medicine residency. I was a chief resident in the Yale affiliated program and found myself at 350 pounds. And it really was my wife, Rosette, who came to me when, she was pregnant with our third kid and said, are you going to be alive, when our kids grow up? Like, you're a smart guy. You've, evaluated these systems in the past. You've helped hedge funds make millions of dollars. You've helped small pharma buy these, products and market them. And, you've, diagnosed problems in my family and your family and, things that other people missed. Like, you scored on the 90th percentile on your board exam. Like, why can't you figure this out? And so that was like the pivotal moment, I think, like, hey, that reminder, like, hey, you have this passion preventing illness, like, you have to look into this. And so that's really where my journey started. Then, I went from 350 pound doc. 3 years later, I was a 200 pound doc. And, I guess that's really where my journey into nutrition, preventative health really started. I mean, I had gone through all of medicine. I was board certified. I knew medicine better than they knew medicine. I knew hepatitis drugs before they knew hepatitis drugs. I knew, obesity drugs before they knew obesity drugs, because I was in that world. Right. I knew the regulatory environment. So I knew medicine better. I scored on the 90th percentile on my board exam. Right. Not to toot my own horn, but like, I knew my passion was to know things as best as I possibly could, because I believed that my knowledge would actually help somebody and my ignorance would harm somebody. Right. So I studied their system. Right. I mean, like, I don't think you can study it better than I did. Right. I don't think I could have studied it better than I did. So that's where it started, and once you start peeling back the layers of bias and fraud and interests, then you come to see the truth. And that's a scary truth, I think, for most people.
Dr. Trow, that's an amazing story. And I feel like you're kind of in the perfect spot to continue to push this, work against kind of what we're seeing in the world today, which is just a rise in obesity. As you've experienced it yourself, you've studied it. I'm curious. So that conversation with your wife was obviously an emotional spark for you, but what was kind of like the informational change or shift that happened with you? Like, were you of a certain way of thinking when it came to how to lose weight before you did it? And then had some shift in sort of how you went through and like discovered how to lose weight through that 150 pound weight loss journey that you had?
Yeah, I mean, like, look, the mantra is energy balance and calories, the nonsense, the straight up BS, the lies that they tell us about calories, okay, calories mattering, calorie counting being important, you know, calorie information being important, just the straight up lies. There's so much evidence showing displaying calories doesn't affect anybody's decision. Knowledge of calories doesn't affect anybody's decision. So yeah, that's what I believed. Low fat, you know, lowering it because it has more calories, and count your calories, and it's the responsibilities on you to balance your budget. That was my previous thinking when I was 350 pounds. The minute I realized that was all bullshit was when I really started to make progress. And I said, well, wait a second, what is my biggest obstacle? That was it. What is my biggest obstacle? Right? Holy shit, I'm hungry every freaking second. I can eat, like, literally there was a vacuum that, you know, they had a nickname for me. I'm going to go see my cousin now, who I love. You know, he had a nickname for me growing up. It was vacuum cleaner. Because I'd go to the table, he'd joke around. He'd be like, let's turn the switch on, Tro. Right. And I would just eat up all the food.
Yep.
Right. No off switch. And I was like, wait a second. The biggest barrier for me to achieving sustained weight loss is my hunger, my satiety, my appetite. So I went back to literature. I'm like, all right, let me just see what's in the literature. I read, before I got board certified in obesity medicine, I read 300 diet books, 3 textbooks on obesity, and over 3,000 original articles.
Wow.
Right. I mean, I went in, like, I was like, I'm going to learn this better than anybody. Right. And then you see the house of cards. Right. There's more fruit nonsense. There's never been a study showing more than 1 to 2 servings of fruit helps anybody. And even with the BS epidemiologic healthy user bias data that they put out there. Right. So just so somebody knows what that means, the healthy user bias is like people who generally want to be healthy will do what their doctors say and what is considered healthy. And so this will confound the big, you know, survey-based data that says, you know, meat's the worst thing and fruits are the best thing and vegetables are the best thing. So anyway, even in that data, that highly flawed data, more than 1 to 2 servings of fruit never helped anybody. Actually, if you go, mortality increases after 2 servings of fruit. Well, why do they lump fruit and vegetables together always? Cruciferous vegetables, the more you eat, nothing happens to mortality, right? Nothing happens. It's like it drops after 1 serving, you lower mortality, and then it just keeps staying flat. But fruits, the more you eat, after 1 to 2 servings, all of a sudden it's going up. And I'm like, wait a second, why are they lumping this together? And then you peel back the layers. Walter Willett, the PCRM, PETA, all these interests, all these special interests, Kellogg's, like, you just start to see the lies. Right. And then you look into the interventional data. Let's take diabetics and give them fruit and give them whole grains and give them vegetables, like the Faith DM trial that took severe diabetics and fed them what we should be eating, quote unquote. And what happened? Nothing to their diabetes, nothing. So, and then you see, you know, back, you know, in Atkins days, 2007, the A to Z trial that shows that, you know, low carb diets produce better results for glycemia and weight loss. And you're like, wait, what the wait? What? Just wait 1 second. Right? Like, just wait 1 second. How is this possible? How is this possible that we've been ignoring this? If this was a drug and I was looking at drugs for pneumonia, I'd go look at the studies and see which one did better. And low carb was always doing better. Yeah, fine. Like, people can't sustain a diet, quote unquote. So after 6 months, everybody kind of equalizes. But hey, you know, we know that the first 6 months of any dietary program, that's when people are very adherent. And when they adhere, low carb is doing better. Right? I want that one. I was like just a doctor who was like, I want the best, most effective way to go about it. And then you go into ketosis and its effect on appetite, protein and fat and its effect on appetite, the absence of carbs and what that does, glycemia and appetite, right? And you unravel the story of, holy shit, we've been lied to. like systematically lied to. Like technocrats, interests have basically just lied to us on what to do. That's the only way I can explain it. There's no other it's either that or doctors are the most idiotic profession, lemming ostrich, people that, people that just put their head in the sand and don't look around and question. So both may be true. Right. But so when I found the data was so convincing, right, I put it into place. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna lower my carbs and see what happens. And all of a sudden, I'm like, first year I'm down 60 pounds, 70 pounds. Next year I'm down another 50 pounds. The year after that, I'm down another 20 pounds. I'm like, wait, what? Right? What just happened? Right? And people are like, my colleagues are like, Tro, you should just be counting your calories,
Yeah.
Right. I'm like, well, wait a second. Like what? And then you look into the calorie data and it's even worse.
Yeah.
The calorie information, people do not like apps that count calories. It saps their motivation, systematically shown. People do not modify their behavior if you tell them the calories at checkout. People do not modify their behavior based on the calorie information on nutrition labels, and people do not affect how much they eat knowing the calorie information. That is in the literature, right? And yet it's, the guidelines say, eat less fat to maintain energy balance and calorie balance. It was all lies. Sorry to yap so long.
No, it's an amazing story. And I think too, we love the fact that you said you literally threw yourself at this. You said you read 3,000 articles, 300 plus books. It seems like that kept leading you back to this low carb approach where you said, all right, well, shit, why don't I try this and see how it goes? How did your medical colleagues respond to your weight loss when you were telling them that you were eating this lower carb, higher saturated fat diet?
The way that the modern medicine looks at weight loss is, okay, great, that worked for you. Like that's what worked for you, and it's just the calories, right? So this is the way that they interpret. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, like that's what worked for you. And yeah, it did work for me. And there is some truth to, hey, look, if you don't enjoy the food you're eating, you're not going to be able to maintain it. That concept makes sense. But really, well, what's the biggest issue? Like I went to a big medical conference, Obesity Week. And, I said, there was this talk on fasting. And the problem with fasting is adherence. And fasting, most people adhere to fasting like they adhere to a multivitamin. They do it when they remember and they can, right? Which is like maybe 50% of the week when it's prescribed to them, right? And I asked this lead expert thinker, I said, how harmful is the legacy messaging of eat multiple small meals, you're going to kill yourself if you don't eat, and you're going to lose muscle, to people adhering to fasting, right? How harmful is that message? And they couldn't answer me. They couldn't answer me. So the problem is yeah, we have these, various dietary paradigms, right? But the legacy messaging is harmful to the ones that actually work better, right? So like adherence is important, right? But we need to isolate the things that are most likely to work. Like it's like prescribing a medication, right? If I give you a medication that's not likely to work and then I blame you for it not working, I've let myself off the hook. So as doctors, we need to flip the way we think. It's what is most likely to work in this person, and can I evangelize them to take their diet prescription and adhere to it, right? So it's not so much about, what works for the person. It does matter. What are the cravings of the person? What are their food aversions? What are their, unique needs, right? That is important, right? But it's my job to help them stick to the plan, right? It's not my job to blame them when they don't stick to it. So the problem with my colleagues is they view it as their problem. It's the patient's problem, right? It's whatever worked for them. They have to figure that out. That's lazy, unethical thinking, in my opinion, right? No, you're responsible for this human life. And I'm not saying like you can control somebody else, right? And you can dictate what they do or don't do. At the end of the day, if they want to indulge, they can indulge, right? But it's your responsibility to help them. It's your responsibility to isolate alcoholism and help them,
Right.
and opioid addiction and help them, right? And it's your responsibility to isolate the people with diabetes who are still eating sugar because they're harming themselves and help them, right? So I don't think modern medicine views it that way. They want to, like, it's whatever you can do, right? So yeah, they looked at me and they're like, okay, it's just the other, you might as well have done a potato diet or a Twinkie diet. Yeah, like the guy did Twinkie diet, you're that guy. I think they started to pay attention more when I started publishing, right? Like, hey, wait a second, this guy's onto something. Sorry, guys.
No, you're good.
Right? This guy's onto something. We published our study on binge eating. Low carb diets lowered binge eating symptoms. Then we published our study. The NLA, the APA says restrictive diets cause eating disorders. Well, we took an eating disorder and we showed that it reduced symptoms of binge eating. Right? The NLA, the National Lipid Association, says, don't do a ketogenic diet with severe hypertriglyceridemia. We took people with 800, 1,000 level triglycerides and showed them coming to under 200. Right? And then we took, the ADA says, this carb stuff, yeah, you can lower your carbs, but it's all about weight loss and energy balance. So we took people who didn't lose any weight with an A1C of 11 and showed that they got to under an A1C of 6.5. They reversed diabetes without any weight loss. These people didn't need to lose weight.
Wow.
Right? One of them had a little bit of weight to lose, but the other two didn't. We published the case series. You don't need to lose weight to improve glycemia. You just need to lower the carbs. And they still don't acknowledge that. In fact, I got told that I was a, quack for saying that just recently, even though I've published this case series, right? So, and then we showed recently, hey, wait a second, the cholesterol that goes up in people who do low carb diets, it's not so much about the saturated fat. It has more to do with their weight, their carb restriction, and their baseline metabolics. We took 600 people from Dave Feldman's survey, and then we showed we can reverse the cholesterol increase just by adding a tiny amount of carbohydrates, challenging the AHA, saturated fat raises cholesterol BS, which, in the overall population, to a small degree, yes, very small degree, right? But that's not what drives cholesterol changes in low carb diets, in very low carb diets. So when I started attacking the paradigm in the literature, peer-reviewed literature, then people are like, hey, wait a second. Some of those colleagues that I had back at Yale and, Toro, my initial, my medical school, we started to really pay attention. Some of the professors came to me and said, holy shit, I did what you did. I lost weight and my migraines are gone, just like you said it would. Like, holy crap, I'm off medications. Right. So it was, it's been a slow, long battle, convincing them. And that's, that's kind of what led me to Doug Reynolds and starting the SMHP.
It's kind of, it seems like it's this interesting balance between following the literature and also just following the results that you can today at least find online, like people who are having success. I'm curious if you could unpack simply the difference between these epidemiological studies and interventional studies and sort of how you view those, because it sounds like you've been ingrained in the literature and understanding of this obesity crisis. And is there validity to both of these types of studies, or like which ones would you really
definitely validity to both, right? So you have to like, but you have to put things in perspective, right? So when there's discordant data, you have to ask more questions. Right? So if meat causes diabetes in population-based data and these 100,000 people who take surveys that eat meat, and yet when you give meat in 1 year, 2 year trials to people and it improves their diabetes, you have to pause and ask questions, right? And it's not to say that both can't be true, possibly, right? I don't think that both are true personally, but it's not to say they can't be true, right? There could be some story, something we don't understand, right? It should lead you to ask more questions, but that's the problem. People are not asking questions, right? They're saying, no, eat less meat, like eat Lancet, all the New York City with their meatless Mondays and vegan Fridays, right? They're promoting behavior change based off of flawed data or incompletely understood data, right? So I think you should pay attention to all data, right? Okay, and I think you should always question your own beliefs, right? This is like imperative, right? We don't want to get stuck in our own traps. We want to like lead people to health, right? So we have to question our own beliefs. But when there's discordant data, you have to like stop and think, right? And so sometimes, well, let's just say, so there are flaws in each approach, right? You can get a wide swath, an immense amount of data from these surveys, right? Just an absolutely incredible ends, right? So if there's small signals, it can help you pick them up, right? And it may not give you all the answers, but it may help you ask the right questions. But if you have interventional data that's just so convincingly discordant, right? Meaning like it doesn't match up with that, the population-based data, it's time to stop and ask questions. And ultimately, it's what do you do for the person in front of you, right? And this is where the N of one approach becomes so interesting. And we have this power in the clinic. Here's your CRGM. Here's your serial lab results, right? And we can tell you what happened to you. I don't need you to rely on, Chris Gardner, who did the A to Z study and the Diet Fit study. I don't need you to rely on, Harvard, who does these population-based studies. Let's rely on your response to your intervention, right? Here's your CGM. Here's your serial labs. Make something happen into your life and let's measure it. Let's see what happens, right? And so I think this is the new paradigm. We are making the data, right? We are literally, my clinic, I don't think there's a person in this planet who's looked at more CGMs than I have. I really don't think that there is one person on this planet, maybe small research groups here and there, right? That have poured through, CGM data on a very large scale. Possibly, even then it may be close, right? I mean, there is not one person in this world that I would turn to give me insight on CGMs, right? And none of this data exists in the literature. We know, for example, based off of CGMs, that glycemic variability, nocturnal glycemic variability, meaning blood sugar fluctuations at night, right, in somebody with obesity and diabetes has a 99% predictive value for sleep apnea.
Wow.
That doesn't exist in the literature.
No.
That's
right?
crazy.
So we have insight that just nobody else has, right? So there's a value in that N of 1 times 1,000, right? And there's a value to real-time, or near real-time data, right? And serial data, right? So, I think that this is the next paradigm, and then being able to publish that quickly for other people to see. In the past 2 years, we've published 4 studies. We're working on our 5th and 6th right now, so that our colleagues can learn,
Mhm.
You know, that'll be important, I think, for the next step. So yeah, we have to take in all data, right? We have to take in all data, even though everything's got its flaws,
Mhm.
Right.
you know, but everything has its limits. And you'll see that, you know, technocrats and authoritarians and people who want to make change, right? People who quote unquote want to make change, right? They will rely on the faulty data,
Mm.
Right.
right? And so to some extent, like that's a big red herring, and that's something that should give you caution. It doesn't mean it's useless, right? It just means that, you know, they're nefarious.
Mhm. Dr. Tro, do you have, for someone that's listening to this that wants to experiment with the CGM, do you have a set recommendation for time that someone should use the CGM for? I've used one for a few months. I've gotten great benefits from it. Do you view it as a long-term tool? Do you view it as a temporary tool? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it depends. So for the average person, I think seeing what affects your blood sugar in real time, how your sleep affects your blood sugar, how the food you eat affects your blood sugar. You know, people think like, oh, sushi is healthy, it's fish, and then they go and they realize that, hey, wait a second, you know, the rice is literally soaked in sugar, the gingers are literally soaked in sugar, the sauces all have sugar and soybean oil in them. And, you know, the tempura is basically processed carbs and processed flour, and it makes their blood sugar spike up to 200 for 2 hours, right? That'll make you change your behavior. So I think that it depends. For diabetics, it's critical, right? For people with very narrow windows, so young and healthy people, right, you probably will get a good idea of what you can tolerate over like 2 to 4 weeks. For people with diabetes who have very low threshold for carbohydrates and very high insulin resistance, you know, it could be you know, I think that they are more likely to benefit over the long term, to know their time in range, their time in target, right? So yeah, I think everybody should do it. When we sell them, if you're interested in them, you can just contact our office, and you know, we'll help you get it. We can prescribe it nationwide. That's not an issue. But I think most people, I mean, you don't need it. You don't necessarily need these things. Atkins did it without any of this bells and whistles. You know, like just eat meat, fish, chicken, eggs, Greek yogurt, green leafy vegetables, and some berries if you can, you know, if you want something sweet, and call it a day. Like you don't need to complicate it. But if it will motivate you, it's an intense motivator. I'll tell you that. Seeing it, it's like seeing your, you know, your bank account info on your app. You know, it's an intense motivator.
It's funny you mentioned the sushi, because we both experimented with CGMs in the fall, and the first thing I tried was sushi, and my blood glucose shot up, and I was like, that's just like, I didn't expect it to shoot up that much. Like I was like, okay, I'm gonna have a little rice, but as you said, like it was above 200 for over 2 hours, and that was for me the first time that I had eaten something where I was experimenting on the CGM, and that there was definitely value in that. Just being able to see it and look at it and be like, okay, this is like me, you know, going to the gym and being able to see, like, you know, the weights go up and stuff like that, right? Like this is valuable data, even though I already knew, like, to some extent, sushi is maybe not the best thing for me, but you know, I didn't think it was the worst. And then, you know, lo and behold, it's one of those things that you probably shouldn't be eating all that regularly if you're trying to monitor your blood glucose levels.
I mean, I think, look, I think, I don't think we can use the CGM as an arbiter of what's good and what's not good. I think if blood sugar values matter to you and your health, right, then it's wildly helpful, right? So I don't know if like a periodic blood sugar up to 150, you know, is from sushi is harmful. I don't know that. I suspect it's harmful, because those blood sugar spikes cause, you know, advanced glycation end products. The sugar literally binds to proteins. That's how we measure blood sugar. When it binds to hemoglobin, we measure the A1C. Or when that blood sugar binds to albumin, and we measure glycated albumin. So the way we measure the severity of disease is literally by that process of sugar binding to protein. So I suspect that blood sugar fluctuations more frequently are harmful, although we don't really know. I mean, we have a ton of indirect evidence saying it's harmful, right? But how much, how little, I don't really know, you know, and I'm not certain how much we can, you know, like, I don't know if, you know, one massive blood sugar fluctuation a week would cause harm or not. You know, I don't know if one a month would cause harm or not, or one a year. What we know right now is if your A1C rises from 5.5, you know, all the way up to infinity, your health tends to get worse, right? That's what we know. So I suspect those blood sugar fluctuations can guide most people, right? I don't know if it, you know, matters as much in kids, you know, when you're still growing, that insulin may be beneficial. I don't know, you know, if, you know, so there's a lot we don't know, but I suspect, you know, if I see a blood sugar fluctuation of 200, you can sure as well, you know, and it's from food, I'm not going to eat it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to eat it. I mean, I think I can get my blood sugar to 160 through exercise. Should I stop exercise? Probably not. You know, so I think you just have to, no one marker is like a judge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Is there something to be said about having a blood glucose level that stays steady for like too long? Is that something that you would look at and say, maybe you want some variability in it?
I generally think the less variability, the better.
Okay.
Right. That's my, you know, in fact, glucose variability predicts weight loss. Like the lower the variability, like just think about what that means, right? If you have a low morning rise, you know, if you have a, let me just see, if you have a low morning rise, right, and you are not having massive fluctuations throughout the day, right? What does that mean? Your hunger is going to be pretty tame, right? If you're not having downward trajectories of your blood sugar. And it means your stress is probably managed, because remember, stress will spike up your sugar and bring it back down, right? And it means your sleep's pretty good, because if your sleep's off, your morning rise will be accentuated, right? So you're kind of measuring carbs and processed sugar in the diet, you're measuring stress, and you're measuring sleep, you know, all in one, you know, measurement, right? That's glycemic variability. And yeah, you can game it to some extent, you know, but I think for most people, it's an excellent indicator. If the glycemic variability is low, you're going to lose weight. You know, in fact, we can predict weight loss, like I said, to 99%, right? If your glycemic variability is low enough, I can tell you it's a future predictor of weight loss. It just means your lifestyle is good, you know? You know, it's nothing is 100%, but it's pretty damn close.
Tro, what are the basic data points and biomarkers that you think everyone should know for themselves if they want to get healthier?
I mean, I'm a data whore. So like you know, I don't think it's fair to ask me, because I want patients interacting with medical equipment. I want patients seeing their own results. I want patients seeing their blood glucose, their lipids, their, you know, so it's tough to say. Do I have evidence that doing all that is helpful? Other than all the patients in my practice, I don't have evidence, right? So I believe in more data more frequently, but you know, there's evidence that even says that's maybe not that good, right? If you see more data more frequently, you may order more tests, you may do more things, right? So I think it's, yeah, I mean, I like blood sugar, frequent blood sugars, lipids, inflammatory markers. I think there's some value to some genetic testing. But, you know, I think like my role here is to create an ecosystem for people, right? I want, like, we have an app, right? Why do we have an app? We want to deliver education and a community for people so they can interact with people like them and be supported by people that are on the same lifestyle plan they are, who've struggled the way they have, who've succeeded, who've had hardships the way they do, right? I want to deliver education to them. I want them to have their blood sugar, if they're taking their weight, their lean mass, their fat mass, their blood pressure, their heart rate variability, their blood sugar, continuous glucose measurements. I want that data, right? If they're taking ketone measurements at home, breath ketones, pulse ox at home, temperature, why, as a clinician, wouldn't I want that data? I want that data, right? It only helps me be better. And keeping them interacting with that, right? So what do people do who have obesity, right? When they're eating off plan or when they're not feeling great, they tend to withdraw, right? They avoid the scale, they avoid the CGM, right? So, there's a components of shame and guilt, and sometimes, they're busy and they don't check these things, right? So that's an opportunity for me to say, hey, we're with you, we're on your team. Like, hey, just check in and let's see what's going on. Right. So I want the data, right? As it's funny. I used to be like my family makes fun of me. My older brother was like, didn't you used to complain about the NSA spying, on everybody? And like, here I am. I'm like the medical NSA. But, I guess we get people to agree to it and they buy into that system, right? They don't have to do it, but they buy into it. So, we like data. We think, the interaction, the content, that social networks that are formed, the bonds, the small groups where we have patients interacting and making those important bonds, right? This is what helps people stay on their journey. So I'm big on collecting data. I mean, we can do without it. Atkins did it without it. Westman does it without it. So it's not needed and it's not like a must do for everybody.
I was just about to ask, how important do you view the community element of what you're doing or patient to patient interactions where they're able to share experiences and be able to kind of support each other, or even if it's just patient to family interactions who are, there and willing to help out?
Yeah, we look, if we have somebody with high Yale food addiction scores or high binge eating scores, we will immediately recruit their family, right? Bring your family, bring them to every meeting, right? If you're comfortable with that, right? We will immediately put them into small groups with 5 to 10 other people who have similar situation of them. We'll cohort patients with diabetes in small groups if they choose, right? So, and it helps take away the shame, the guilt, the loneliness, feeling alone, and it gives them a peer group, it gives them a community, it gives them support, right? It gives them places to turn to, right? So it is beyond critical, I think. And this is what being outside of the medical system has given me the ability to do, right? I am not paid by insurance companies. I don't take any insurance money whatsoever, right? They would not pay me to make an app that helps me do this, right? They wouldn't pay me for it.
Yep.
Right? I had to pay for it. And why do we do it? Because we know it's needed. We see the benefit, right? We see the benefit because we're watching this remote scales. We hold ourselves accountable because we watch the blood sugar measurements, the blood pressure measurements, the scale measurements, right? So we see the effect of what we do in real time, right? And when we do better, like, when there's like those places where a salesman makes a sale, they like ding the bell. When somebody comes off insulin, we ding the bell. You know what I mean? Like we ding the bell, right? So the problem with being in the insurance model is visit based. And some of these elements that keep people in their intended lifestyle plan, there's nothing to do with visits, right? So in fact, it's the opposite. It's asynchronous care, right? It's care. It's like when you, Brad or Harry, when you guys are like in the middle of the night, like, oh, maybe I'll watch a diabetes lecture or maybe I'll interact with that group, right? They go in and they watch a 5-minute video on diabetes. They learn something about hunger. They learn something about appetite. They learn pragmatic ways of how to travel and keep low carb, right? And we made it easy for them in modules to just go in and watch these videos. Like, why do they need to wait for my visit a month from now to talk about it, right? So it has been critical to be outside of the system for us to grow as a practice. We have two amazing health coaches, Brian Wiley and Amy. I guess, I mean, they're like veterans, you know, and we're trying to help keep people healthy, man. It's not easy, and it's hard being out of the system, right? You know how many people we turn away? They're like, "Do you accept insurance?" We say no. You know, and so I think the next step for me is figuring out how do we reach more people and still maintain a high level of care.
Yeah, to that point, Tro, just for the audience, you tweeted something a couple days ago that went viral, and I just wanted to read it because when I read it, I literally got chills. And it says, "I left my cushy hospital job. I've refused to sign any contract with insurance companies. I don't accept any money, gifts from the pharma or industry. I took a huge practice loan so that I could practice medicine independently. That's why I can speak so fearlessly and truthfully. This was not easy and it didn't happen overnight, but it took concerted effort and it's cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars."
Yeah, I mean, I haven't gotten paid in 3 years. I've invested it all back into the business. You know, I mean, there's benefits of being a small business owner, you know, that I've been able to reap, and, you know, but I you know, I had a $250,000 paycheck plus benefits, you know,
Yeah.
like I have student loan.
Walk away from.
Yeah, walk away from. Just
Yeah.
walk, you know, get up. Sorry. Like, you know, and the easiest thing to me would be take insurance and see people in 7 minutes, which is the current model for medicine, right? But it's not. Why did we let them make us shitty doctors? Right? This is what I ask myself. Why have we let hospitals make us into shit doctors? Right? Why have we let insurance companies pay us less and less and less? And so we're cramming patients into less and less time so we can make the same amount of money. Like, it's made us into terrible, terrible doctors. It's great if you have somebody who's not invested in their health, right? It's perfect. Here, just take a medicine, go. Take a medicine, go. Take a medicine, go. Right? But it doesn't help anybody, right? It helps the doctors actually, and it helps the insurance companies. Doesn't really, and it minimally helps patients, right? But and then the hospitals, right? They buy up practices and they say, well, you know, we don't want you to do group meetings. There's no benefit to that. Actually, just send them to the bariatric surgeon. Send them to the hospital, right? Just send them to the diabetes educator, right? Generate more visits for us. Send them to get more labs because that generates money for us, right? Do an EKG while they're there because now you can bill more for the insurance. Do a breathing test while they're in there with you. Have the staff do it. Right? We've let hospitals and insurance companies make our profession bad. And then they give you, no, don't worry, we'll give you off from 12 to 1. And we'll get you free lunch. Right? And the pharma reps come in and they gave you free lunch. The pharma companies literally hire strippers and prostitutes, I kid you not, right? To come in, feed doctors, give them fancy, take them out to fancy meals and hire them as speakers, right? Hire them as speakers. This has been shown. It was in the New York Times about how a pharmaceutical company hired literally strippers and prostitutes as pharmaceutical reps.
Shit.
You know, it just shows you, and, you know, Purdue now is basically defunct and how they promoted, hiring, getting these doctors to prescribe more by paying them speaker fees and all this nonsense. I mean, this is the current system, right? And at some point early in my career, I was like, I'm tired of being a shit doctor, right? I'm tired of it. And it's not right. It's not right. And it coincided with the time where, I started discovering how much I knew that the regulatory environment could be manipulated. I knew that from my time in the hedge fund pharmaceutical world as an analyst, right? But I didn't realize how entrenched nutrition and medicine was, right? And so I was like, I'm out of this. I got to get out of this. It's like escaping, a matrix.
Yeah.
How
much have you seen? How much have you noticed with the level of skin in the game that you have now? I imagine the incentives are just perfectly aligned with the outcomes that your patients get, right? Like patients aren't going to continue to come to you if you're not giving them the best level of care, right?
I am a cash-based service,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, we can submit bills to insurance, you can get some money back, but I'm a cash-based service. If I'm not of value to you, I'm done, right? I'm done, right? And you know what? You want to know the reality? This is what happened. I thought like, oh shit, I'm going to be screwed. I can't see more patients. I have to find other doctors that I can work with and train because we're turning people away.
Yeah.
Finally started paying myself a small salary just in the past 4 months. Right. But it's not about that. Like, I'm not like, thank God I don't need more money. I don't need more money. Right. Because my mission is good. I have enough. Right. And all I need to do is execute now. Right. And execute is serving my patients and now training other doctors to do what I do and to get them a living wage. Right. Because the hospitals are offering $250,000. Right. So how do I convince other doctors to take a small little pay cut, but do good work? I think that's hard. Yeah. And if we can get some either crowdsourced investments, or if we could convert to a not-for-profit, we'll probably be able to execute better on our mission. So that's kind of the next phase, is training other doctors and, making the financial systems align with the mission, which is end diabetes and obesity, right? And do better than what we have now. True. And it's been done. Virta's done it. It's not like we're reinventing the wheel. Virta took diabetes. We have more of an obesity focus. But I think, we're like just there on the next steps.
Tro, what I was going to ask you, to your point, do you see a good collection of doctors and medical peers that will message you or DM you behind the scenes and say that they love the message, but maybe they feel pulled to continue to work at the hospital because of the $250,000? Do you see a good amount of that happening?
I mean, there's a good amount of both. One, I wish I could say what you say, right? That's a big one I get from all sorts of doctors. I wish I could say it, but I can't. Right? They're in leadership, in a leadership position in an institution, or, they're my friends and we talk. I wish I could say what you say. And yeah, the truth is we come out with a ton of student loan debt and we have to make money.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, I like, God has been good where I can forego a couple of years of salary to build something. Right. But I can't expect everybody else to do that. So we're going to build other doctors up to make a living salary. We've built the system. Right. And so now we have to, with the whole system, the system's done. Right. And that's what I'm good at, is building up systems, right? Making them efficient, making them work better. Right. And then, now we didn't even have a pool of doctors to pull from. Now we have the SMHP. So now we can bring in some doctors one by one and, grow them in this model. right? Kind of not quite like, you know, just making it easier for them. I wish somebody came to me 5 years ago and was like, I have an app for you, a system for you, health coaches, right? The whole, billing system, everything all taken care of, right? So that's kind of where we're at. And we have some good doctors we're working with now. We're excited about coming on and growing.
It seems like technology plays a big part in the ability to realign the incentives towards helping patients get really high quality care that gets results. In a lot of ways, telemedicine, it seems like has a lot of promise, and the CGMs, as you said, just to have someone like you who's really focused on the outcomes and not living in a system where it's more based on the visits, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think at some point this will all change, maybe 5 to 10 years down the line. It's I don't know how, but it'll change. And the truth is, as premiums go up and as large corporations are insuring themselves, and now that they're being forced to cover insulin, I hate to say this, and the obesity epidemic is through the roof, we're in such a position to be of value and service. Right. So, I mean, we had a large corporations, start with us, and a pilot program, a pilot wellness program. We've already saved them more than we cost them, right? In drug prescriptions, right? Insulin, diabetes medications, blood pressure medications. And when our program is done, just imagine the savings from there. Like, we're a 1-year program for them with 15 or so patients, right? We've lost over, I don't know, 300 pounds or so, not including family members in the cohort. And we're off of 100 units of insulin a day in that cohort. We're off of tons of medications now that were just unnecessary or made obsolete by dietary change and lifestyle change. So we've now, we're coming on 6 months into this program. We are now costing them less than our savings. So the future really is like finding win-win-wins where the patient wants it, employer wants it, we want it, right? And because of it's unfortunate to say, but because of the cost of insulin and because they will be forced to be given to patients at $30, this puts the hook on employers. So, and employers are like, we need systems that work. Hey, who's published those systems that work? Of course, Verda, but we're in the low carb space. Besides Westman, Mark Cucuzella and myself, we're and Sue Wolver, but they all work for institutions, right? So Sue's with VCU, Mark's with West Virginia, and Eric Westman's with Duke, right? We're the only private enterprise,
wow,
right, that has the capacity to adapt to an employer. Yeah. So it's exciting times, and it's unfortunate to say, I think we're going to be more and more busy, and more and more successful. But what we're seeing right off the bat is the immense value we're creating for these employers. And we had previously turned them down, and this is the first pilot that really accepted our terms, which was, we want the data and we want to publish the data. And so it's, I think, this is the future.
So Dr. Tro, do you think that there will be a future where pretty much every major insurance carrier is able to cover CGMs for non-diabetics?
It'll be a while.
It'll be a while.
Yeah, that process takes like 10 years.
Okay.
So like, to get that to happen, you have to imagine the device company will have to run the trials showing that it's of benefit, right? And to show that it's of benefit may take time, right? So like, they would need to take, let's say, pre-diabetics, right? Give them a bunch of CGMs and continually give them with some sort of coaching program, I'd imagine, and then see if they could delay the onset of the A1C going up, right? That may take like 3 years in the average population to go from pre-diabetic to diabetic, say 3 to 5 years, right? And if they can show that that doesn't, then the insurance company will be like, oh, we can use this for prevention and education in a diabetes prevention program, right? So I'd say that process will take somewhere from 3 to 10 years. But they're not expensive, man. You can get them for like, we'll get, hey, if you want a CGM, text our office. We'll get it for you for, I don't know how much we charge, but it's basically at cost. So we'll get you a CGM. Okay, we'll get you a CGM.
Love it. Is if what's sort of, if someone's looking to make a lifestyle change and start to take those steps that you did however many years back, what's sort of the basic advice that you give as sort of those first lifestyle starters just to kick things into gear?
Eat meat, fish, chicken, eggs, Greek yogurt, green leafy vegetables, low carb fruit, right? Like raspberries, blackberries, and strawberries, right? And if you cannot restrict a food, let's say chocolate, ice cream, pizza, whatever it is, if you can't restrict it, replace it with a low carb version, right? And then do that. Wait for your appetite to suppress over the next 4 to 6 weeks, and then you can figure out, you know, how you want to lose weight, right? Whether it's, you know, restricting your meal frequency and doing some time restricted eating, or, you know, reducing portions or limiting snacking. So yeah, eat meat, fish, chicken, eggs, Greek yogurt, green leafy vegetables, and then follow, you know, pay attention to your body. What foods make you hungry? What foods make you feel good? What foods make you feel full? That's a superpower, right? If you're hungry, if you have cravings, and now you know what foods shut that part of your brain off, that's a huge value to you, right? So it's just eat low carb at first, replace what you can't restrict. You know, if you can't live without cookies, you better find a high quality cookie to live with. Right? If you can't replace pizza, if you can't restrict pizza, you better find a high quality pizza to live with. You can make pizza. You can make, you know, Quest is a decent pizza. Okay. You can make, you know, my wife's company, full disclosure, it's my wife. She has a line of almond flour and coconut flour based products. She has a dough mix. That's the bomb.
Nice.
And you can make pizza. And so I think transitioning off of the SAD diet is hard for some people. And if you can't just do, like, look, for me right now, I pretty much eat meat and black coffee, right? But it wasn't like that, right? It didn't just happen like that. And if you can do that, go ahead.
Yep.
You know, it was like a couple years of a couple Quest bars a day. And then it was a couple Quest bars a month. And then it was some pizza that my wife concocted, right, every once in a while. And then it was like, okay, only at Christmas and Easter. And then it's like, I don't even eat it now.
Yeah.
Right. But I think have that when you're starting, you know, your tendency will be to blame yourself and blame your budgeting and your willpower. And that's just nonsense thinking. It's not helpful. Right. Just think, what would make this easy for me to sustain forever? Right. And if you cannot live without something, you better acknowledge that right up front. There's nobody you're hiding from but yourself. And then come up with a way of having something like that you're happy with. This way, making low carb easy for you from now until the future. And then you can improve the quality over time. You know, you can start to, you know, if you can afford, if you're going to use an oil, use avocado oil. Right. If you're going to, you know, if you can afford it, get, you know, grass-fed meat. And if you can't, just do your best, you know, do your best. I don't get grass-fed meat. I wish I can afford it. I'm highly supportive of, you know, regenerative agriculture. I'm this close to buying from Walden Farms. So me and my wife are talking about it.
Oh, yeah.
So we really want to support them. Okay. I got no financial relationship to them, but we just believe in the concept. But, like I said, I'm a poor doctor. You know what I mean? I got, student loans I haven't even paid off, a business loan I haven't paid off. So I did the best I could, which was supermarket, but now life's getting a little more, sustainable. And now I'm thinking, okay, like, where's the best place I can buy? So you don't have to go from zero, to like, you can do this slowly and have a clear vision in your mind and slowly execute on it. So that would be my advice.
I think it's awesome. I'm interested your breakdown. It seems like your approach is focused on the nutrition, and then if there's then focus on, going to the gym or things like that you can add on afterwards.
Weight loss is always second. Weight loss. Yeah. So so if you have intense cravings, right, and you make somebody hungry, what are you doing?
Right, exactly.
You're setting them up to fail.
Yeah.
So it does not make sense to consider weight loss as the first goal. It's satiety and hunger and cravings and appetite and your ability to do this. That is the focus, right? After that, you can focus on weight loss, right? But it doesn't make sense to make an animal hungry, right, and give it no way to address its cravings, no community, no support, no, idea of what to do and how to do it, right? You're just setting them up to fail. And this population blames themselves, right? So they blame themselves. People with obesity tend to blame themselves. I don't have enough willpower.
Yep.
That's bullshit. I was a 350-pound doctor. I scored 90th percentile on my board exams through willpower, right? I didn't lack willpower. I lacked insight. So that's my general advice is, focus on food and then, and hunger and satiety. And then once you can manage your appetite and cravings, then figure out how to eat less. Don't go in the reverse order.
Yeah.
It's really tough to have enough willpower when you walk into the conventional grocery store and there's 47,000 products in the average grocery store. And even just walking through, small little convenience store, you're just loaded with this stuff wherever you go. So it's like, to your point, I think having those repeatable systems and learning how to just rewire your palate with real food, single ingredient items, and almost be able to recognize those products, not as real food, but for what it is. It's a combination of products, seed oils, refined sugars, et cetera, and just focus on the real food in the outer aisle of the grocery store. That's so powerful. Because like you said, willpower is only going to take you so far.
It's a finite resource. The minute you haven't slept, your wife's yelling at you, your kids are yelling at you, and your boss is yelling at you, and it's another pandemic. Like, what do you think you're going to do? You better plan for that. Don't plan for I'm going to lose weight. Like, it's not worth it. That you doesn't need any help, right? The real you needs help. Yeah, I'm in agreement.
100%. Tro, what's the best way for people to connect with you online?
Just drtro.com, spelled out doctortro.com. That's it. Just go. You can text our office right through there. You can message us. Somebody will get back to you. Any social media platform, it's Dr. Tro spelled out. You just DM. You can hit me up in the DM. Either myself or my social media manager will help kind of direct you to our practice. Listen to the Low Carb MD podcast. We got an app. It's freemium, which means you can get it for free and start just interacting with people who are on that low carb lifestyle. It's Dr. Tro at iOS or Google. You can get me on anywhere, man. I feel like a grifter now. I'm like, I got an app. I got, I'm all over the place. But we're trying to make medicine great. We're trying to make nutrition important again. So I think that those are like, these are our values, right? And we're beholden to results. And here's the thing: I thought, people are just going to come get our insight and then leave. And in fact, it became people don't want to leave, right? People don't want to. Once you have a team that knows you better than anybody else knows you, right? In terms of medically speaking, they don't want to go.
Yeah.
And so I'm at capacity. I need to train other doctors, and that's my next step.
That's incredible. Well, you're incredibly genuine. You can feel the energy coming through what you guys are doing. It's an unbelievable mission. And I think you're the example of like putting your money where your mouth is and really trying to create change. And, we feel that in your messaging. So just really appreciate you coming on. This was an awesome conversation. We'll definitely have to do a part 2 in the future. And you're officially a member of the Meat Mafia. So we're excited about that.
Where's the bone broth? Does it happen?
We got to do it in person.
We'll do it at Low Carb USA in San Diego. That's what we'll have to do.
All right. So I got to make it out there.
Awesome. Well, thank you,
bro. Appreciate it.
No problem. Have a good one.
You too.